awakens is cold. Behold, the power of the ancient spirits awakens.
Imagine a powerful genie, one who could grant any wish, but instead, they decide to teach you a lesson. What if the very spirit you sought for ultimate wealth instead showed you the terrifying emptiness of endless greed? This isn't your typical Arabian Nights tale. It's an ancient African spirit, a Djinn, who confronts a king's obsession with gold, and the surprising, transformative lesson that followed. Subscribe for more interesting and captivating stories every week. In the heart of ancient Africa, where the desert winds whispered secrets older than memory itself, there stood a kingdom of breathtaking splendor. The city of Zalmar rose from the golden sands like a jewel, its towers gleaming under an endless sky, its markets bursting with silks, spices, and treasures from distant lands. The people sang as they walked, children played in fountains carved from marble, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with prosperity. But within the grandest palace at the kingdom's center, behind walls adorned with precious stones and hallways lined with gold, lived a man who knew no contentment. King Omar sat upon a throne of solid gold, draped in robes woven with threads of silver, wearing a crown so heavy with jewels it left marks upon his brow. Yet his eyes, dark and restless, constantly scanned his treasuries with a hunger that never ceased. Every morning, Omar would descend into his vaults, running his fingers through mountains of gold coins, counting and recounting gemstones that sparkled like captured stars. His servants would bring him reports of the kingdom's wealth, and he would demand more. More taxes. More tributes. More gold to fill rooms that already overflowed with riches he would never use. The people of Zalmar began to whisper. Once, their king had been generous, celebrating festivals with lavish feasts, ensuring every child had bread and every family had shelter. But something had changed in Omar's heart. Year by year, the feast grew smaller, the public fountains fell into disrepair, and the palace gates, once open to all who sought the king's counsel, remained locked and guarded. In the markets, old women spoke of ancient warnings. They remembered the stories their grandmothers had told, tales of spirits who walked the earth when the balance between giving and taking tilted too far. They spoke of the Djinn, beings of smokeless fire and infinite wisdom, who served not human desires but cosmic justice itself. These were not the wish-granting genies of children's tales, but ancient forces that predated kingdoms, entities that could reshape reality to teach lessons the universe itself demanded be learned. But King Omar dismissed such tales as superstition. He believed only in what he could count, weigh, and lock away. His gold was real. His power was tangible. What need had he for spirits and stories? Then came the night when everything changed. Omar sat alone in his greatest treasury, a vast chamber deep beneath the palace where his most precious acquisitions lay stored. Mountains of gold coins rose to the ceiling. Chests overflowed with rubies, emeralds, and sapphires. Ancient artifacts from conquered lands lined the walls. Yet as Omar gazed upon his hoard, he felt only emptiness, a gnawing void that no amount of wealth could fill. The air in the chamber suddenly grew cold. The torches flickered, their flames turning from orange to an eerie blue. Omar looked up, his hand instinctively reaching for the jeweled dagger at his belt, and froze. Before him stood a figure that defied description. It appeared as smoke and shadow at first, then solidified into the form of a being both terrible and magnificent. The Djinn towered above the king, its skin seeming to shift between the deep brown of ancient earth and the shimmering gold of desert sand at sunset. Its eyes burned with the light of stars, ancient and knowing, seeing through flesh and bone to the very essence of a soul. The Djinn did not bow. It did not ask permission to enter. It simply existed, filling the chamber with a presence so powerful that Omar's vast wealth suddenly seemed as insignificant as dust. When the Djinn spoke, its voice resonated like distant thunder, like the earth itself forming words. Omar, son of Rashid, grandson of Khalid, king of Zalmar and keeper of countless treasures. I have watched you for many seasons. I have seen how you gather and hoard, take and never give, accumulate without purpose or end. The spirits of the earth have called me forth, for the imbalance you create threatens more than just your kingdom. It threatens your very soul. Omar found his voice, though it trembled. Who are you to enter my vault uninvited? Even spirits must respect a king's domain. The Djinn's laugh was like wine through ancient canyons. I am older than your kingdom, older than the desert that surrounds it. I am the flame that does not consume, the voice that speaks for balance. I have not come to grant your wishes, Omar. I have come to show you what your wishes have already granted you. The king's greed overcame his fear. If you possess such power, then you can give me what I truly desire. Make every grain of sand in my kingdom turn to gold. Make my wealth so vast that no other monarch in history could compare. The Djinn's eyes blazed brighter. You do not understand, mortal king. I offer you not what you want, but what you need. I will grant you a gift, but it is not the gift you imagine. Before Omar could respond, the Djinn raised one hand, fingers spreading like the branches of an ancient tree. The gesture seemed almost casual, yet reality itself rippled in response. From this moment forward, the Djinn declared, everything you touch with desire for possession shall indeed become gold. But know this, Omar, I grant this not as blessing, but as mirror. In your golden world, you shall see the truth of what you have become. Omar's heart leaped with triumph, his fear forgotten. Everything he touched would become gold. The world itself would be his treasury. He reached out immediately, placing his hand upon a wooden chest beside him, and watched in amazement as the wood transformed, becoming solid gold before his eyes. The Djinn watched, and in its ancient eyes was something that might have been pity. 3 days, Omar. You have 3 days to learn what I would teach. If by the third sunset you have not understood, you will remain in the golden cage of your own making forever. With those words, the Djinn dissolved into smoke, leaving Omar alone with his new power and his racing thoughts of unlimited wealth. The king rushed through his palace, touching pillars and watching them transform. He touched tapestries, furniture, decorative vases, everything he could reach, laughing with delight as his palace became a monument of solid gold. By dawn, his personal chambers gleamed entirely in gold, every surface reflecting his grinning face. But when the servants brought his morning meal, disaster revealed itself. Omar reached for the bread, and it hardened into metallic gold before he could bite it. The food turned solid and inedible. The water in his cup became liquid gold that could not be drunk. His stomach growled, but every food he touched transformed before reaching his mouth. Panic began to creep into his thoughts, but he pushed it aside. Surely the Djinn would not let him starve. Surely there was a way to control this power. He called for his advisors, but when his most trusted counselor approached and Omar clasped his shoulder in greeting, the man's scream was cut short as his entire body transformed into a perfect golden statue, forever frozen in an expression of terror. Omar staggered back, staring at his hands in horror. The palace erupted in chaos. Servants fled before him. Guards refused to approach. Word spread through Zalmar that the king had been cursed, that death awaited anyone he touched. By the second day, Omar was completely alone. He wandered his golden palace like a ghost, unable to eat, unable to drink, unable to touch another living soul. The wealth he had accumulated surrounded him, but it offered no comfort. His golden chambers became a prison. His golden throne, untouched, mocked him from across an empty hall. In desperation, he ventured out to the kingdom he had neglected. What he saw broke something inside him. The fountains, once symbols of Zalmar's prosperity, stood dry and cracked. Children played in dusty streets, their clothes threadbare, their faces stained with hunger. Market stalls stood half empty because the king's taxes had left merchants unable to restock their goods. An old woman, her back bent with age, struggled to carry a heavy jar of water from the distant well. Without thinking, Omar reached out to help her, and watched in fresh horror as the jar turned to gold, its precious water spilling across the ground before transforming into metallic droplets, useless and heavy. The woman looked up at him, and instead of fear, her ancient eyes held only sadness. "My king," she said softly, "you could have used your hands to help us carry our burdens. Instead, you used them only to take from us. Now you cannot use them at all?" Her words pierced deeper than any blade. Omar fell to his knees in the dusty street, his golden robes dragging in the dirt, and for the first time in years, he wept. That night, the Djinn returned. It appeared in the palace courtyard, beneath stars that seemed to burn with judgment. You have seen your gift, the Djinn said. Tell me, King Omar, do you feel wealthy now? Omar looked up, his face streaked with tears. I am cursed. I am dying of thirst surrounded by gold I cannot drink. I am starving surrounded by wealth I cannot eat. I would trade every coin in my treasury for a single piece of bread. At last, you speak truth, the Djinn replied. But you have not yet learned the full lesson. Come. Walk with me through your kingdom. Though he feared what he might see, Omar followed. The Djinn led him through Zalmar streets as dawn broke over the city. They passed homes where families huddled together, sharing what little they had. They saw merchants who, despite their own poverty, still offered water to travelers. They witnessed a young girl giving her only piece of bread to an even younger child who cried with hunger. You see, the Djinn said. These people, with almost nothing, give freely to one another. They understand what you have forgotten. Wealth is not what you possess, but what flows through you to others. A river that does not flow becomes stagnant and poisoned. So too does wealth hoarded become a curse rather than a blessing. Omar watched a group of neighbors working together to repair an elderly man's roof, asking nothing in return. He saw joy in their cooperation, richness in their community, abundance in their shared purpose. I have been a fool, Omar whispered. Worse than a fool. I have been a thief, stealing from my own people to fill vaults I never needed. Understanding is the first step, the Djinn said. But understanding alone changes nothing. You must choose, Omar. This is your final day. At sunset, your fate is sealed unless you can prove you have learned what wealth truly means. As the day progressed, Omar made his choice. He could not touch things to give them away himself, but he could command, and command he did. He ordered his vaults opened. He directed his guards, carefully, using only words, to carry his treasures into the streets. Distribute everything, he shouted from his balcony, careful not to touch anyone. Every coin, every jewel, every precious thing I have hoarded. Give it to the people. Repair the fountains. Feed every hungry child. Rebuild what my greed has destroyed. The people of Zalmar stared in disbelief at first, but as golden coins began to pour through the streets, as treasures were handed freely to those in need, the city erupted in celebration. Merchants used their portions to restock their stores. Builders repaired homes and public works. Families purchased food and clothing, medicine and tools. Omar watched from his palace, unable to participate directly, but for the first time in years, he felt something other than emptiness. As he saw children laughing, families embracing, the entire kingdom transforming from desperation to hope, a warmth spread through his chest that no amount of gold had ever provided. As the sun touched the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, the Djinn appeared one final time. You have given away your treasures, it said. Yet you seem happier than when you possessed them all. Why? Omar smiled, and it was genuine, reaching his eyes in a way it had not for countless years. Because I finally understand. I was the poorest man in my kingdom, though I owned the most gold. I lived in spiritual poverty while my people, with so little, were rich in the things that truly matter. Community. Generosity. Love. These are the true treasures, and they multiply when shared rather than diminish. The Djinn nodded slowly. You have learned. The curse is lifted. Omar looked down at his hands and found them returned to normal flesh. He knelt and touched the ground, and it remained earth beneath his fingers. He wept again, but this time with relief and gratitude. I have one question, Omar said, looking up at the ancient spirit. Why did you choose to teach me rather than simply punish me? Why grant me these 3 days to learn? The Djinn's stern features softened almost imperceptibly. Because punishment changes nothing. Only transformation matters. A destroyed king helps no one. But a transformed king can heal a kingdom. The universe does not seek vengeance, Omar. It seeks balance. I am an instrument of that balance. What should I do now? Omar asked. My treasuries are empty. I have nothing left. Now, the Djinn said, you have everything. You have knowledge. You have understanding. You have the love of your people, which is worth more than all the gold in the earth. Use it wisely. The Djinn began to fade, its form dissolving into the evening air like smoke in wind. Remember this, Omar, and teach it to those who come after you, came the Djinn's final words, echoing across the courtyard. True wealth is not measured by what you accumulate in your vaults, but by what you generate in your communities. The richest person is not the one who has the most, but the one whose giving creates the most abundance for others. This is the secret that greed conceals, that holding tight to wealth is the surest way to lose it, while releasing it freely is the only way to multiply it beyond measure. And then the Djinn was gone, leaving Omar alone in a palace no longer golden, in a kingdom no longer suffering, with a heart no longer empty. King Omar ruled for many more years, and they were the finest years Zalmar had ever known. He established councils where the people's voices were heard. He ensured that wealth flowed through the kingdom like water, reaching every corner, nourishing every life. The fountains flowed again. The markets overflowed with goods. Children grew healthy and strong. When visitors came from other kingdoms, seeking the secret of Zalmar's prosperity, Omar would smile and tell them of the Djinn, of the curse that was actually a blessing, of the 3 days that changed everything. True abundance, he would say, comes not from accumulation, but from circulation. Not from grasping, but from releasing. Not from taking, but from giving. This is the law of the universe itself. Violate it, and you will know poverty no matter how much you own. Honor it, and you will know wealth beyond measure, even if you possess very little. In our world today, Omar's lesson echoes with uncomfortable relevance. We live in an age of unprecedented accumulation, where individuals amass wealth beyond the imagination of ancient kings while others struggle for basic necessities. We chase the illusion that happiness lies in possession, that security comes from hoarding, that success is measured by what we keep rather than what we share. But perhaps we, like Omar, are building golden cages that imprison rather than enrich us. Perhaps we too need to learn that the hand that grasps tightest holds the least, while the open hand receives abundantly. The Djinn's lesson wasn't just for a greedy king in an ancient African kingdom. It was for all of us, across all time, a reminder that our deepest poverty is spiritual, and our greatest wealth is what we give away. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more inspiring stories. See you next time.